Hey, you, are you feeling that you give everything to your partner when you have sex? Or that you are chasing your orgasms? Or you're just feeling uncomfortable to explore this part of yourself? Well, in this episode, I'm talking to the self pleasure coach, Heloise, and she's explaining and giving some tips about how to own our sexuality. So come on, it's time for Speaker Darling Show! And welcome in Speak Up Darling Show. I'm Vanessa, your host, and today we're welcoming in a conversation, it's really specific conversation with Heloise, with a sex coach. And let's hear it from you first, Heloise. Talk about a bit where you come from, and we are not in the same time zone, so not same place, but yeah, we merge in online. It's all
Yeah.
interesting for that. Please.
So I'm Heloise, and I'm a self-love, pleasure, and orgasm coach. I live in South Africa. I'm from South Africa. And the reason I started this work is because I was faking my orgasms. So I could not have an orgasm with a partner. I did not know how to do that. I could orgasm really easily on my own, but there was this missing piece when it came to orgasming with a partner. And it's something that when it started, I felt a tremendous amount of shame and guilt about. So I had my first sexual experience when I was quite young at the time. I was 16, and I didn't know how to speak up. No one had prepared me for the experience that I was about to have. I'd seen in the movies and online and everywhere, and it kind of was, boy meets girl, and you're interested in each other, and there's all this chemistry, and we had all this chemistry, and then it should just flow from there. I should have been able to orgasm, and when I couldn't orgasm, I didn't know what to do, so I faked it and I pretended, and that created a pattern that stayed with me for 15 years until I eventually chose to do something about it. And I couldn't tell anyone. It was this deep, dark, horrible secret that I had that made me feel so unlovable and broken, and no one would ever want to be with me. Until eventually I went through a bad breakup, and I decided enough is enough. I'm tired of faking it. I'm tired of pretending. And I realized on a deeper level, I'd made myself this perfect girlfriend for all these people, where I was doing everything for them. I was showing up in so many ways, and I was asking for nothing in return. So I did a deep dive in myself, and I decided this is something I wanted to work on. And I didn't know at the time that it was going to lead to a career change for myself, but I loved the work so much, and I fell in love with the methodology. And when I started opening up and speaking to people about my experience and what it felt like to fake my orgasms and why I faked them, I suddenly realized I'm not alone. And this problem is more common than we think. So many women fake orgasms, struggle to feel pleasure, struggle to connect to their pleasure, struggle with their libidos, don't know why, don't even understand what's going on, and they make their experiences wrong. So we fake, we pretend it's okay, we push off having sex for another week, even though we're feeling guilty about it. We do all these crazy things so that we can fit in and feel loved, and we don't want to offend our partners or hurt anyone. But we're ultimately the ones paying the price at the end of the day. So yeah, the work that I do is to really support women specifically in learning to love themselves as is, working on, reclaiming their pleasure, stepping more into their full pleasure potential, and then owning their orgasms, rediscovering their orgasmic self, all the pleasure that's available to them, and that means stepping into more confidence, stepping into more self-worth, loving yourself, loving your body. I mean, dealing with all sorts of body issues is a big step, because if you don't love yourself, if you don't love your body, you're not going to prioritize your pleasure. You're not going to prioritize doing this work. You're not going to prioritize spending time on yourself. And if you're not going to prioritize your pleasure, well, you're going to struggle to have an orgasm. So,
It's funny.
Yeah.
I find that really funny, because it's one of the basic needs that's like food, like water, like sleep. I mean, this is something we all need, and we put so much pressure on this in particular, on having an orgasm or just having pleasure, and be comfortable in your own skin. And especially obviously I can't talk for men as I don't know, but I feel that especially for women because we have so much pressure on the body image and what we have to show to people, or how we're strong, or blah blah blah, and it's really impacting on how we can have pleasure for ourselves or receiving pleasure, and I feel it's so unfair because we put this shame on physical needs, but then if you don't have it, it's also what you're not able to get an orgasm. It's just a shame. It's
Exactly.
both hand of the stick, and I find that's so unfair. So I think let's see first on definite, really having definition of what is an orgasm and what is sex also.
So I think these two are very important things to look at. So, if you want to break down like the definition of an orgasm, so an orgasm is a movement of some sort. So in order to have an orgasm, you generally have some kind of movement, some kind of stimulation, and that results in pleasure. So there's this buildup of pleasure, and this buildup of pleasure, you need to have a mind state shift. So eventually what happens is there's a part of your brain, a part of your body that switches off, and you disappear into oblivion, whatever that looks like. It's different for each individual, but you need that to have an orgasm. So that's kind of my definition of an orgasm. It's some kind of movement combined with an altered mind state shift, an increase in pleasure, and you have your orgasm. And when you think of the definition of orgasm, I think where many people get like stuck is when you come back and you look at sex, because I think what needs more work is generally our definition of sex, because we go around and we use the word sex freely, very easily, and we drop it here and there. I had sex this weekend, but like, what do we exactly mean by sex? And so when we start breaking down our definition of sex, for many of us, sex equals penis in vagina penetration. And everything else is not sex. Everything else is considered foreplay or the before act or whatever you want to call it, but that's not sex. That's not the main deal. That's not your main meal. Like everything else is like the starter and maybe a dessert on the end. But like sex is this penis and vagina penetration. And what that does for so many of us is it creates problems, because now many women, we don't orgasm when we masturbate and touch ourselves. We're not orgasming through vaginal stimulation. Most of us are orgasming by touching our clitorises. Yeah. And so what this does is, for a lot of women, we struggle to orgasm through penetration because it's something that we're not practicing and we're not trying to do. And that was my problem. Like, I'd masturbated for a really long time and I could easily orgasm through clitoral stimulation, but when it came to actual vaginal penetration, I felt nothing. And so in my head, it's like, oh, well, I can't orgasm during sex because sex is penis and vagina penetration. But then what does that mean as well? If you're seeing a gay couple or lesbians, are they not having sex because they're not having penetration? So when we start realizing that our definition of sex is extremely limiting, and in a way comes from a male-dominated society, and it's very outdated, and that this definition serves men pretty much only.
Yeah.
Because if we thought of sex as something that like, oh, well, sex is my partner going down on me and I can have an orgasm, or sex is my partner fingering me and I can have an orgasm, then suddenly I'm able to have sex and orgasm a lot easier in many different things. And I'm not prioritizing penetration as the be all and end all of all the experiences. Because right now you've got penetration, and then maybe you'll have like oral sex, and then you'll have fingering, and there's like this hierarchy of acts, as opposed to all of them being equally juicy, equally amazing. And then you get into pick which sexual act works best for you, or what you enjoy most, or like kind of moving through them like you would on a menu, picking out different items to eat. Like, that shifts a lot for many people when you expand your definition of sex. So for me, the invitation is to really, think about, what is your definition of sex? What would you like to include in your definition of sex? And how, by including these things, does it shift how you feel when you go about having sex? Yeah. Because suddenly, is it like, oh, well, if my definition includes fingering, oral sex, all of that, am I able to easily orgasm during sex?
Yeah. Yeah, it's really funny how much we don't realize how much the definitions are made by male,
Yeah.
and they don't realize even that, because for them it's normal. But
Yeah.
so it's not the point.
Exactly.
Just voila, this is the things, and they just have urges, as they like to say. But when you're really open to what sex can be, and having this whole perspective, I mean, in fitness, it's something you can even have in orgasms when you train. It's something that makes so much pleasure when you have the right movements and you feel good and you feel you have right energy. It's orgasm. And when you explore that, and then you explore that with a partner, it's so much kind of, it's many doors opening
Yeah.
to what could
'Cause
happen.
orgasm
Exactly.
isn't limited to having sex.
Yeah.
You could have an orgasm through nipple stimulation, or there's so many different ways of having an
Yeah.
orgasm. So if we can have orgasms in all these different ways, why we're like, oh no, but sex is just this one very specific thing that I do.
Yeah. Just a technique. One technique.
This one technique in out, and that's it. Nothing else works.
Yeah, but it's limiting for men too,
Yeah.
because they for them, if you cuddle or if you have a bit more than a cuddle, um, they, they they forgot that it is also sex, and then suddenly, oh, we didn't have sex for blah blah blah. Yes, we did. It's just we didn't do like the technical way of or the
But we just
minimal way
all
of
need
it.
to shift our way of thinking about that, because I think it's also like, so it's understanding that for many many hundreds of years, first of all, like, women's sexuality has been completely suppressed. So
Yeah,
even if you think of the way we describe, a woman who has a lot of sex, or she's going to be a slut, or she's going to be a whore, it's like a very negative way of calling someone. Whereas a man that has a lot of sex, suddenly he's a stud. Amazing, high five, you've done a great job.
yeah,
So there's a stigma attached to being a highly sexual woman, or a woman that's in touch with her sexuality. It
yeah,
doesn't feel safe for many women to be in touch with their sexuality, because we live in a world where everything about our bodies has been sexualized.
yeah,
Our nipples are sexualized. You can't even put a picture on Instagram of your nipples. So
yeah,
everything about my body has been sexualized for the male gaze. And it feels very often for many of us very unsafe to be in this body,
yeah,
to be present with our bodies. And so when we start expanding on our definition of sex to include other things, we start shifting how we're feeling about all of these things. And also, it's bringing our partners into the picture as well, because
yeah,
it doesn't help for us to just shift our beliefs, and then our partners, our brothers, the rest of our family still have this old belief, because they're not going to understand what's going on. But when you think of like everything that has been done so far, that script has been written predominantly by men in a way that best suited them.
yeah, yeah. It's more
So
comfortable for them.
when we understand that, then it's like, okay, well, obviously, sex equals penetration, because that's how men get the most stimulation, and that's what feels good to them. But if we look at the data and we look how the majority of women masturbate and touch themselves and achieve orgasm, that is from clitoral stimulation without a doubt. So
Mm.
this orgasm gap exists because we haven't ever once considered the women's side of the story.
Yeah, as
Women
usual.
start with their pleasure. And it's the same when it comes to libido. Like, so many women come and they say, I'm struggling with my libido, or there's something wrong with my libido. And we're basing our libido, we're expecting to have the same libido, first of all, as our partner, which is very rare. Most of the time that doesn't happen. But
Mm.
for many men, they have spontaneous libido. So what that means is, if you're walking around naked and your partner sees you and suddenly they'll have an erection, bim, bam, boom, they're ready to go. Life is great.
Yeah,
And for many women, like, we don't have spontaneous libido. Some of us do. That is, like, it does exist. It's not that you're a unicorn or there's something wrong with you if that's how you get turned
yeah,
on. But the majority of us, our libido will be more contextually based. So it's like, if the dishes aren't done, if the kids can hear me, is there a babysitter? If the parents are in the room next door, I'm not going to be able to get turned on, no matter how excited I could be. We could also have more responsive desire, where it's, I need my partner to start stroking, touching, and kissing me in order for my desire and my libido to build up like a little fire inside of me.
Yeah.
And many of us, we're not. So we've been shamed for masturbating, touching ourselves. It's something we're not supposed to do as good people, as good women, as good girls. And what that means is that we're not in touch with our sexual essence and who we are as a sexual individual. So when you're not in touch with your sexuality, when it's this piece that's completely shut off and cut down, like it's, I'm not allowed to be a sexual being. Like it doesn't exist. I leave the house and I'm at work and I can't be sexual at work. I'm not allowed to show this, like, even if you think of like flirtatious energy, like you get so much energy and fun and playfulness from being a little bit flirtatious. But if you're not allowed to express or play with that anywhere, and suddenly it comes 8 o'clock at night and your partner's home and the kids are in bed, and now you get into the bedroom and it's like, okay, great, we need to have sex, you're going to struggle because your entire sexual energy has been suppressed the whole day. You can't, just not a switch that you flip on at 8 o'clock at night and suddenly everything's working perfectly fine. It's like a kettle that you keep boiling throughout the day. And so many of us struggle because we don't know how to keep our kettle at a gentle simmer throughout the day. We don't know what excites us. We don't know how to keep in touch with that sexual energy.
Yeah. It's it's all related to how you perceive your body also, I guess, and how you. I mean, I find myself like period of the year. I'm kind of, oh yeah, I'm ready every day. I'm like a cat. I have this period of stimulation, and the rest of the time is, yeah, okay, we can do that. And but I notice my partner is really good to notice when I need sex, and he feels more than me because I'm so stressed sometimes that I just forgot, and I even forgot that he can make me feel distress and nice. But it feels like hard work. So it just feel like, oh yes, we have to eat healthy, we have to sleep 8 hours, we have to drink water, and yes, we need to have sex. But it's not so well seen for us as women. And I mean, it's how do you teach your clients to get from this space of it's not good, or it says you've been told it was not good, to it's a part of you, it's part of your needs. How because sometimes the gap is so big, or for me sometimes it feels so I have to jump out of the cliff.
Yes. Yeah, the gap can feel really, really huge. And I think like what you spoke on there, just about like, being in touch with your body, like we receive so much messaging about our bodies, specifically as women, that first of all, our weight is incorrect. The way we look is incorrect. This is wrong. That is wrong. We should be different. So I think for me, like the biggest part around this is to rewrite your sexual story and to notice for yourself where you're getting stuck. So I think for so many of us, we have this sexual script that sex should look a certain way and our sexuality should be a certain way, and we should be able to get turned on at the drop of a hat. So what that means is we make our experience wrong. So much like you said now, like you go through different seasons where, there's periods where you feel more turned on and you're happy to have more sex, and then there's periods like, it feels like effort, I don't feel like it. So majority of women who have a cycle, like, your menstruation, throughout your cycle, you will feel differently about wanting to have sex. There'll be weeks where it's like you just want to have sex the whole time. And then, leading up to menstruation, you might be like, oh, actually, I don't feel like sex. I want to pull away a little bit more. And that is completely okay. That is completely normal. So we need to also normalize that. We don't have to be sexual 24/7 the whole time.
Yeah.
We need to honor those cycles and where we're at in those cycles and not make our experience wrong. And the only way that I found to do that with clients, it works really, really well, is to rewrite your sexual story. So it's really diving in and looking at what is your current sexual story, what is currently not working for you, where are you experiencing problems? Is it around limiting beliefs? Is it around media? Is it around my body needs to look a certain way and now I'm having sex and I feel like my tummy's hanging over here and there's cellulite and I'm stuck in my head because I'm so worried about the way that I look that I can't actually focus on my pleasure or anything else because I'm just sitting in my head, like feeling so self-conscious and worried about how I'm looking. And if that's the case, well, what content are you consuming?
Yeah.
Who are you following? What magazines are you reading? And
Ah,
there's so much that
that's a
we
lot,
can
yes.
do to shift around ourselves. Like, if you start looking at more content, which is, maybe showing more body positive people and people of all sorts of different shapes and sizes and showing them as beautiful, how does that impact you? Versus following 10 different models, or, nothing gets the Kardashians, but, the Kardashians, and this month they're like, and then they lose weight, and then it's this, and then they're promoting that. And, there's not a single photo put out there without being edited. How does that make you feel? So
Yeah.
there's things that we look at and see, and they impact us the whole time on a continual basis. And so when we're looking at highly edited photos, specifically on Instagram, online, of other women, how does that make us feel about ourselves? Because we're constantly comparing ourselves to these other people, even if we don't know them. And whether that's like around your wealth, the house that you live in, your partner, what your partner's doing for you, you can slowly start curating your online life and everything else to reflect back to you the values and the things that you want to feel.
So it's all to come back to what we really want,
Yes.
and developing this awareness of how we receive the information from the society at different level, what's the content we receive, and the education, I guess, we received
Yeah.
in some ways, because obviously, if you have been kind of labelized when you were a kid, oh, you're beautiful, and and you don't feel like it, or you should stay like this, or blah blah blah, and
It's the same
or
with
after
aging.
mom, yeah, it's
Aging's a tricky one for many women.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
like, I mean, we are obviously, as women, we have more kind of, we have demonstrations, but we have the hormones in general much more impacting our life than men. And just even if, I mean, it starts to talk a bit more about it, I can see that, but I can still see that, yes, you talk about it, but you still have to be the strongest. You still have to be the kind of hero for others, and it's still kind of lot of lot of kind of lot of work in some ways to, okay, she's like this, I'm not like this, but it doesn't mean I'm weak, or
Yeah.
I'm not a woman,
And
or
I think,
whatever.
like, the word choice, like you said there, I still have to be the strongest. And
Yeah,
so, if we break that down, what if you don't have to be the strongest? And what
yeah,
if we shift the belief around having to be the strongest, or having to show up a certain way to be loved, to be respected, to feel like you're worthy of X, Y, Z? What if we shift those beliefs? And I think that's what becomes so, so important when you rewrite your sexual story. And it's, I say rewrite your sexual story. It's easy to do. It's super helpful if you've got someone to support you in the process, because here's the thing. Many of us don't recognize our own limiting beliefs because they feel like second nature to us.
yeah,
We don't question them. It's just what it is. And I think that's where, for me, like, what I love about coaching, it's, you've got someone there who isn't forcing you to be a particular way or asking you to change in any way, but they're reflecting back to you what they're noticing. So it's like, if you're saying, I have to be a certain way, then it's like, okay, well, why do you have to be that way? And then we can dive in and have a whole conversation around why you think you have to be a certain way,
yeah,
which you may not have realized because you're just like, take it for granted. I have to be a certain way to be loved and
yeah.
accepted.
When I was, well, yeah, when I was a teenager, I always thought that in order to have sex, you needed to be like a model, to really kind of have really tiny waist, and anything that I could see on, obviously at this point, on TV shows, especially not really magazines but TV shows. For me, it was okay. So I can't have sex because I'm not at all like this, especially at the time of your, when your hips kind of are a bit more
Yeah.
rounded, you get more boobs, and you're taller than others. I mean, it was really kind of weird, but and having, it took me a long time to understand that it was okay. This is like this. I mean, ugly people have also sex life, fortunately, uh, and I
There's a lot
mean,
of things
ugly
about the
in
sex
some way,
life.
ugly for the standards, the society standards. It's something that's you 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 need to get around it, but um, I mean, for example, from your clients, what do you see the most is impacting your clients?
So I think for me, a big one is self-love. And in self-love, that falls, loving yourself as you are. So learning to love and accept your body as it is, learning to love and accept yourself. Loving yourself, self-love means prioritizing your needs, putting yourself
Yeah,
first.
that's true.
So I think for me, when I look at self-love, I'm like, it's such a big, broad umbrella term where there's so many other things that fall under it. And so many people loosely throw around the term of self-love. But I feel like it can take years and years of work to reach a place where you can fully love yourself. Because loving yourself doesn't only mean, many of us, it's like, oh, I love myself. And we're loving the good parts, or we're loving only certain parts of ourselves.
Certain parts.
But true self-love is acknowledging the shadow side of us as well. So it's acknowledging, maybe those creepy, weird fantasies which you haven't dared tell anyone, and allowing those to be there. I love and accept there's a part of myself that maybe has strange fantasies. There's a part of myself that, I'm scared to share with other people because I'm worried that, they won't like me. But like, I can love and accept that piece of myself. And so I think like the majority of us struggle with self-love because we kind of equate for a long time self-love with being egotistical. It's like, if you love yourself, you're full of yourself. So It's the same, like I tell people, it's like, it's so easy. You can be in a group of friends, and if you have to hear one friend start saying, oh, I need to lose like 2 kilos, or have you seen the cellulite on my thighs? And then the other one's going to come with some other flaw, and you're going to start bashing your flaws, right? But have you ever seen a group of friends where it's like, oh my goodness, I absolutely fucking love my body. I am so proud of the body I have. It's amazing. Everyone will be dead quiet. They won't know what to say because suddenly it's like, oh, well, she's so full of herself. Yeah. She loves herself so much. She's so full of herself. But that's radical self-love. Self-love is loving yourself and owning it. It's not being ashamed of your body. It's not being ashamed of what you've got. It's owning this body that you have.
Yeah, it's more than just not liking your body. It's really enjoying having this
taking pleasure in the vessel you have. So I think for me that's such a big thing to notice is, when we go from, it's not just the lack of judgment that is self-love. For me, it's the celebration. That's true self-love, the celebration of who you are. Yeah. The total acceptance for who you are, the good, the bad, the ugly, the everything in between.
Yeah. But it's a huge, it sounds like it's a huge step again. It's, I mean, because it's so difficult not to judge, because something so, I mean, it's a habit to judge, but, and not to, for example, I probably don't say to myself, I love my body enough, because it's just a statement that's, yeah, of course I love my body. But I don't do enough loudly at something that's, it's, I restrain myself when you restrain yourself when you are happy with something. I feel that it's taboo not to say, okay, don't enjoy too much yourself, and don't say you're happy because something bad will come.
Exactly that. There's this fear because you cannot love yourself so much. You cannot celebrate yourself so much. You're full of yourself. And like you say, something bad's going to come. People don't like people that are full of themselves. And that's like a lie. I mean, when I see people that are loving their bodies and radiant, they're radiant. They exude this confidence and this enthusiasm. And you want to be around people like that. You don't want to be around someone who's sitting in the corner feeling miserable. It doesn't want to take up space.
Drains energy.
And that's how the majority of us tend to live our lives. We're hiding. We're afraid to be who we are. We're afraid someone's going to see us, or what are they going to think? And then we start pretending. So we start pretending to be someone else. And this is what, comes back into the bedroom. We pretend to have orgasms. We pretend to enjoy ourselves for someone else. So we're doing all of this to be loved, to feel like we belong. But ultimately, it's not working, because even if they did love us back for doing those things, they're not loving our true self. Because now we've put on a show. And I think so many of us have gotten really, really good at putting on this show for everybody else and hiding who we truly are. And that's why I think a big piece of the work that I do is stepping into your true, authentic self, allowing that authenticity to shine through, because that's what makes you magical. That's what makes you different from every other human being on this planet. You are unique, and you have your own set of beautiful traits and way of being and way of looking and way of addressing the world and speaking and showing up and wanting to have sex, and a way of, exploring and playing with your sexuality. And that's what makes you beautiful. But we're so afraid of our uniqueness. We're so afraid of our differences that we've made them wrong. We've made it mean something bad. So we live in a world where every single person wants to have, a bum like Kim Kardashian and a waist like hers and fit into the same clothing and, this like heavily made up face. And everyone starts kind of looking all the same. And then we're like, oh, well, I'm wrong because I look so different to that, instead of, this is what makes me amazing. I've got this own unique look here, and it's freaking fabulous.
Yeah, but it's how. Would you have another tip? So if we start with writing a story about sexuality and our relationship with our body, what else? What other tip could you?
I think the best thing for me is look at the content you're consuming. Most of us consume content without thinking about it. So for me, it would be completely reevaluate the content you consume, and just simple things like you can follow sex experts which are speaking about sexuality from a new perspective. Like, you get to create and cultivate, especially with Instagram, your feed so that it's speaking directly to your needs. And so if you want to see more body positive accounts, if you want to see people that make you feel good for the way that you look, follow those accounts, unfollow the others. Stop subscribing to that content because it's only going to make you feel worse about yourself. Then rewriting your sexual story, the story that you have around your body, the way that you look and what that means for you. So rewriting that story. And then I think a beautiful practice that I really love, and that can sometimes feel like a bit of a stretch for certain people, depending where you're at on your journey. But, it's taking time for me. If I break self-love down, it's taking time throughout the day to nurture and love my body, myself, and who I am. And a beautiful practice for me around that is, if I'm in the shower, I like that because I'm already naked. It doesn't mean I've got to get naked for another practice throughout the day. So I'm all about doing things that fit in with your schedule and don't add to it. And the more complicated it is, the less likely you're going to make it a habit. But when you're in the shower, have you ever taken time, just take an extra 5 minutes in that shower, and maybe you soap up your whole body and you switch off the water, and then just take time to rub your hands over your body, feel your body, notice your body, and just notice does it feel nice for me to stroke my hand going up here, do my boobs want to be cupped a little bit? Maybe it's nice to take the palms of my hands and rub them over my nipples. Maybe that feels good. And just gift yourself the gift of pleasure, whatever that may be for you in that moment. You can also do that if you get out the shower and you've got a habit of putting cream on or body cream after the shower. You can stand in front of the mirror and take your cream, and as you're standing in front of the mirror, you can apply your cream and look at yourself, look at your body, admire your body. And initially it might feel hard. So, if you are someone who really struggles with your body and body image and looking in the mirror, notice for many of us, when we look in the mirror, the first thing we see, we criticize. So it's I look in the mirror and it's oh my goodness, I have a pimple over here. My eyes are red. My fringe is skew. My hair's poofy. We criticize something. We very seldom look in the mirror and we're oh, I'm fabulous. That takes practice. It takes practice.
Yeah.
So, as you're creaming yourself, think of one thing to start off that you can compliment yourself on. One thing. It could be your toenails. Some people, that's where you need to start. Literally, I like my toenails. I like my toes. I like my fingers. Whatever it is, if the rest of your body feels really hard to explore and look at, start small. And every single day, the challenge is to find something else. Find something else that you can compliment. Find something else that you like about yourself. Maybe it's your smile. Maybe it's the way your eyes light up when, someone tells you you're beautiful. Maybe it's the color of your skin. And slowly but surely, you start changing how you feel about yourself. But this takes practice and this takes work.
Yeah,
and this isn't an overnight thing where it's cool, I'm going to do this for a week and suddenly I'm going to love my body. No.
Well, if you're honest with yourself, the old practice of the negative self-talk was practice also. I mean,
Yeah.
it was automatic, but it was
Yeah.
practice for years.
Yes.
So, I mean, it takes practice for bring the positive, get rid of the negative, and bring in the positive. It takes practice too. You can't
Yeah.
just,
Absolutely.
or you can
I think
switch.
that's one of the interesting things for me is I feel like you look at little babies and children and toddlers. So I had my two little nieces here in December, and the one's 2.5 and the other one's 4, and they spend half their days naked running around, which is absolutely fabulous. I love it. And there's no shyness, there's no shame around their
Yeah.
body and the way that they look. Or, at one point I was jumping trampoline with them and legs are spread out and they don't care. They're just like, they love themselves. There's nothing wrong with their bodies. And so we are all born loving our bodies. We're not born thinking that there's anything wrong with us, thinking that there's anything wrong with our bodies. That's a taught and a learned behavior. And we learned that behavior by observing others around us and the messages that we received around our bodies.
Yeah.
And that's amazing, because what that means is we can unlearn it.
Yeah.
It means you can do something about it. It may take time, because for many of us, we start feeling a bit of shame and stuff. It starts like 4 to 6 years old is when you start feeling self-conscious and a bit more aware of yourself and feeling uncomfortable. And the reality is it's been that many years, up until whatever age you're at now, that you've had this like negative self-talk, who I am is wrong. And like you say, the negative self-talk is automatic and it happens the whole time. So if you think of like every negative sentence you say about yourself, I need to replace that with one positive sentence.
Yeah.
And start catching yourself. And that's where this is the tricky part. It's like you might catch yourself once you've said the negative thing. So maybe it looks like taking a Post-it and sticking a Post-it on your bathroom mirror and being like, only positive talk. And so every time you look at yourself in the mirror, you'll see the thing, you'll say the negative thing, and then you'll see the thing and be like, oh shit, only positive self-talk. Okay, now I need to compliment something about myself before I can leave the bathroom. Might take you 2 or 3 weeks, and eventually you'll look at yourself and be like, oh, I can't say something negative. I'm going to say something positive instead.
Yeah.
And that's a slow process, but it's a change that works incrementally, and suddenly you will see change through that.
Yeah. No, it's normal to take time on anything you want to change when it's so deep or so related to our physical state. I mean, when it's a mind thing, for me, I think you just need to switch on things. But when it's the physical things, there is the practice, the physical practice to implement into our body, and that switch the body to something better and open doors. But I think sometimes we just forget that the importance of sexuality for women as not just a procreation thing, but as a normal need, as something that's, I mean, we have so many ways to have pleasure or orgasm that doesn't especially require a penis. I mean, it's just the exploration of what can happen, and having a partner that is open to it also, because it's about giving and receiving. I think it's the main thing. From our first conversation, I remember that the one thing I've really found that really kind of stand out for me, it's being safe. That's all around for women. We're always like a prey. We don't, even if we kind of, even if when we are confident with our body, we still have the fear of someone assaulting us in the street, and whatever the day or the time. I mean, some people are focused on nighttime, but it happens during the day too. And all these schemes about how people kind of play on your kindness sometimes to get something out of you. And it's not just a sexually assault, but that's the habit of taking from women. That's we've learned that, oh, but you're a woman, so you give, and it's in your DNA. And in fact, it is not. It's just that we complied for so many centuries to these things. But now, obviously, from our generation, since the one before, and from kind of 20th centuries, there is kind of this movement of re-owning our body, because for women, it's just really, from the moment you don't own your body, you don't feel safe in it, you will have a fight of some sort.
And you're losing
To
power. You're
Yeah,
giving your power away.
until we give that or take that back from us for ourselves. Obviously, you can't give that to our daughters or nieces or something that. And I think that's really powerful, the work you do, because it's so it's so easy to kind of put the sex aside and say, "Oh, it's not for me anymore," and up, I'm done with it, and say things like this. When in fact it's not. It's just it changes over the years, and it depends on the partner you have also. But if you can take charge of that through a coaching, it's I think it's probably the most fun coaching ever.
I like to think that I give my clients the best homework practices ever. Let's be honest.
I do think so. I mean, it's something so basic, pleasure.
Yeah. Well, I think the thing is, like, when you think of like your sexuality, it impacts all areas of your life. And I think for me, that was probably the biggest thing that I didn't realize is, how I was showing up sexually was also how I was showing up in all other areas of my life. So I was doing everything for everyone. I couldn't voice my needs. I couldn't express what I was struggling with. I felt like who I was wrong. And that's how I was everything else. It's not like that was unique to my sexual problems in the bedroom. That's how I showed up everywhere else. So when I started addressing this, it was the catalyst for so much other change in my life. And I think that's the key for me is like, I look at people coming in and wanting to do this work, and I'm like, so often, like I started this not because I wanted to change my whole life. I started this because, I wanted to stop faking orgasms, and I felt like I should be able to have an orgasm with a partner. And I was determined to have that orgasm with a partner. And that's why I started. And in hindsight, the gift that gave me was so much more than the orgasm with my partner. Like, that's nice, but that's like the cherry on top of everything else. Like everything else in a way was so much more because I'm more confident, I'm more self-assured, I know my worth. I don't settle for anything less. It means that like I've not settled. How many of us have settled for partners that we shouldn't be with, but we think, oh, this is the best I can do. We're settling for shitty sex because, I'm too afraid to ask for something else, or I don't even know what else I like. So I'm just going to go with this. It's my duty to kind of just like grin and bear it. Like, this is what I have to do as a woman. So when you start working on that, like everything else in your life shifts. And that's radical and that's amazing. And that's what I want for everybody. And, I think like when you do this work and you start embodying this, the more of us that start loving our bodies and owning our bodies and, wearing that sexy swimsuit, regardless of your cellulite, and being super proud and confident, you're teaching your children, you're teaching everyone around you that that's okay. And you're showing them, you're leading the way of like, in a way, I believe it's like a revolution of what is possible.
Yeah.
Because this also means you're not in competition with other women. You see other women as like support sisters, as your sisters. We're all in this together. We're working together. It's no longer I'm fighting against you because, there's scarcity mindset and there's only so much opportunity. Suddenly there's endless opportunities.
Well, I guess it's still this stigma of competition into the sex, so that who is going to have the orgasm first, or or who's going to have the most partners. That's kind of a really male thing again.
Yes.
That's we need to kind of doesn't matter really. I think also this image of women who are in touch with their sexuality has been also related in the way of a male way. I mean, if I think of Sex and the City, that's
Samantha.
yeah. For me, I couldn't relate to it because for me it was too male way. It was too much kind of. She's just having a lot of partners, but doesn't mean was always good or anything or anything kind of relationship connection related. But yeah, it was always this kind of male kind of image on the sexuality of a woman, and not someone just comfortable with their sexuality without in this way of have orgasms every day or whatever. It's just, yeah, I'm just comfortable and I don't need anyone to judge about it or I don't need to report it, especially. It's just me comfortable with my sexuality.
Well, I think the reality is, like, what's beautiful for me is the more we do each of our individual work around our sexuality, the easier it gets for each of us to step up and be whomever we are as a sexual individual. Because, if you want to be Samantha in Sex of the City, fucking amazing. You go do that. If you want to sleep with 100 people and be content there and, you're happy and they're happy, amazing. If you want to have one partner and be monogamous for the rest of your life and, have your children, amazing if that works for you. And I think that's for me the bigger piece is the more work we each individually do around this, we realize there is no right or wrong way of being.
Yeah.
We each get to choose the path that works best for us. And we don't get to judge or criticize someone else for choosing a different path, because that's what makes this world beautiful and unique and amazing.
Well, I do recommend a lot to follow Heloise on Instagram because I mean, that's how I contacted you. And I think your posts have been really relevant, not just like common that I had to have orgasm, just not that, but the breakdown of why it's not happening. I mean, like the post you've made on stop chasing orgasm. Also, there's something. Oh yeah, that's true. I do that.
We all do it. We're all guilty. It's like, oh, I want that orgasm, man.
Come on.
Pound away waiting for the orgasm. And we forget that, like, there's this whole experience happening between two people, and I can lick my partner, I can taste my partner, I can hold my partner. I can feel all this pleasure inside of me. And if I let go of the orgasm, I can just focus on what's happening, on the pleasure, on my partner, on what I'm feeling, on what they're feeling, and it's amazing. But when we chase the orgasm, that's all we're chasing. And we miss out on life, on everything else that's happening on the other side.
Yeah, that's true. Is there anything you want to add?
That feels really good to me. I've really enjoyed this chat with you, Vanessa. Thank you so much for having me and opening up this conversation. I really appreciate it. I appreciate anybody who's like, oh, I'm going to dive in. I'm going to speak about sex. I'm going to speak about orgasms. I'm going to So thank you so much for having me. I really, really appreciate it. And if anyone wants to follow me or would like more information, you can find me on Instagram, Heloise, so Heloise, Haupt, Haupt. Alternatively, you can also message me. I'm sure Vanessa will add all the details below.
I will add in the description.
Awesome.
Sure.
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your experience and sharing your precious tips to own our own sexuality and stop chasing the orgasm. It's coming and it's creating it by our own savoir-faire, should I say. So thank you. It was Speaking Up, Darling show, and see you next week. Bye.
Bye.